Welcome to another episode of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and today we are on our 10th in-depth character review where we look at General Kenobi. Just last week, the developers announced General Kenobi's arrival into the game, and also last week, me and 4 other YouTubers released our initial reviews of General Kenobi, and today we are going to dig deeper into what he is all about and what he has to offer. But before we can do that, let's go ahead and pull up the Hall of Fame, and last time we went ahead and reviewed Sun Fac, and we granted him the status of Grand Master. Now, where will General Kenobi fall in this game? Well, I fortunately had about a good hour of viewing General Kenobi in action, both in my hands and the other YouTubers' hands, so I have quite a good idea how he's going to fit in this game compared to everything else that's going on. But as you guys know, we start off these in-depth reviews by looking at the history of the character, and General Kenobi is one of the fan favorite characters in the Star Wars universe. And what we know is that General Kenobi was born on the planet of Stu Jon, where he was a legendary Jedi Master who was introduced to the Jedi Order at a very young age, and he was trained in the ways of the Force by his master Qui-Gon Jinn. What helped Kenobi eventually move into the Master Jedi status was the fact that he was the first Jedi in over 1,000 years to defeat a Sith Lord, which we witnessed on the planet of Naboo against Darth Maul. After losing his master to Darth Maul, Kenobi decided to honor his master's last wish by taking Anakin Skywalker under his wing and ultimately helped Anakin be one of the most skilled Jedi in the galaxy. After the victory on the Battle of Geonosis, Obi-Wan Kenobi became a general and won many battles across the galaxy during the Clone Wars and fought many adversaries such as Count Dooku and General Grievous, where ultimately we know that he defeated General Grievous towards the end of the war. As Palpatine's vision began to unfold, Obi-Wan Kenobi was faced with perhaps his most difficult challenge ever, defeating his own apprentice and brother, Anakin Skywalker. With the Empire beginning to rise, Obi-Wan decided to exile himself to the planet of Tatooine to ensure he would look over Luke Skywalker as he grew older. And in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, we see that General Kenobi offers many abilities which show his strong leadership on the battlefield when leading his fellow clones and Jedis, as well as ensuring that when one is in harm, he steps in to save the day. Now, how do we unlock this character? You can't find him on any of the tables. Well, the only way you can unlock him is by participating in the heroic version of the AAT raid, which right now is quite difficult for a grand majority of people as well as myself, and hopefully something happens so we have a better opportunity to get shards of General Kenobi. But other than that, that is the only way we can possibly get him in the game at this point. Now let's get into the mashed potatoes and gravy of our in-depth reviews, where we look at the character before mods and abilities are integrated. And just a quick disclaimer, these numbers are subject to change, but it is foreseen that no drastic changes will take place. But of course, anything can happen from here until the first person finally gets to have General Kenobi in their personal inventory. Now, General Kenobi offers a lot of strong defensive front abilities. And the first thing I want to bring up to you guys is that he is number 5 when it comes to protection. The average protection in this game is 19,459, but guess what? General Kenobi is at 33,546, which is a great number to have for a tank, putting him at some of the very top characters in the game right there. Now, moving on to health. Before even considering his leader ability, which grants a 30% extra health bonus, he is number 5 in health. The average health in this game is 19,076, with General Kenobi being at 27,608. And I'll just go ahead and sneak this in here, but if you do include General Kenobi as the leader, well, guess what? His health is now 35,890, which for a tank is absolutely amazing. Now, moving on to armor, will he be able to wave off some strong attacks? Will he mitigate the damage that's laid onto him? Well, yeah, he's actually pretty good in armor. He is number 15 in armor. The average is 227, with General Kenobi being at 270. Now, he's also in the top 15% in this category, meaning he will try to reduce as much damage as possible. So with a lot of health and low damage being applied to him, he's going to live for quite a while. Now, what about Tenacity? He offers a lot of special abilities that needs him to take his turn when it comes time. So you need to make sure he's not going to get stunned or shocked as often. And fortunately, he is number 10 when it comes to Tenacity. Now, the average is 28%. And General Kenobi is actually at 35%, so this puts him in the top 10% in the game for Tenacity. And this next point that I have here is health stealing. And even having a couple percentage points of health steal is great. And he offers 10% health steal. So that means when he's attacking, he's going to regenerate some of that health into his massive health pool that he already has. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the more offensive front of him. And one of the pros that he has is that he is number 14 in armor penetration, which means even though he's a tank, he can definitely try to get through the armor of a character like Fives or Old Ben, someone with very strong armor, so he's not going to fall back too much. And the average is 51, and General Kenobi has 89 for armor penetration, which puts him at the top 15% in the game there. Now, what about the average stats here? And you know what? It doesn't have too many average stats, but two big things that you definitely need to point out here. First off is that he's number 38 in speed, so slightly above the average, which is 126. We see General Kenobi at 127, putting him at the top 40% in speed in the game. Now, what about maximum damage? We know he's a tank, which usually comes with the tag of not being able to hit as hard, and we find he is just slightly below the average. Number 54 to be specific for maximum damage. The average maximum damage is 5,304, and General Kenobi is below this at 4,756, and this comes from his ability Lead the Charge, which the data doesn't show this obviously, but Lead the Charge calls in a ton of assists, so when you add up all the attacks that come with it, it's much more than this, but General Kenobi alone will only do 4,756 with this damage. So let's go on to cons, and really, there aren't that many cons. I mean, potency, he's at 0, which doesn't matter in this game, or for him in particular, because he does not apply debuffs, but he is number 87 in basic damage. Now, the average is 4,262. General Kenobi's at 3,136, which is definitely below that average, and that puts him in the bottom 10% of damage dealers in the game, in terms of basic damage, that is. But however, this number does not take into consideration that his basic ability also can do double damage if all of his allies have a buff. So technically, we'll talk about this later, he could have the third hardest hitting basic attack in the game, assuming all allies are buffed, which again, numbers don't tell the full story. But with all those numbers in mind, let's go ahead and talk about the kit. And I feel like this is an essay that the developers wrote up because he has lots of sentences for all of his abilities. And we see that his kit follows the role of having a strong leader where he helps push his squad forward in the battle by doing away with negative status effects and promoting constant healing and assist attacks. And the first ability, which kind of bounces off the basic damage we mentioned a while ago, essentially what it does is it deals physical damage, but also he has a 75% chance to grant foresight to a random ally that does not have it, and he gives it to them for 2 turns. And then here comes the real kicker. If all allies are buffed, this will deal double damage. So he's going to try to constantly give some random person foresight, kind of like how Rey or Yoda grants themselves foresight. Kenobi's just going to give it to you for free, which is absolutely great. Now, without the last sentence in mind, this attack will deal 2,837 to 3,135, but after the bonus kicks in, if all allies are buffed, he could deal 6,272 before mods are even in the equation here. So he could be a hard hitter, but you have to make sure you constantly try to spread the buffs around. Now, the Negotiator. First of all, I love the animation because it displays his signature style of using a lightsaber, but it also has a great utility out of it. He dispels all debuffs from allies, and then he grants them the opposite buff for 2 turns, if there are any. And then all allies who were not debuffed to begin with, they gain retribution for 2 turns. And then to top this off, he gets 50% turn meter after using this ability. So just to kind of explain, abilities like Shock, Ability Block, and Damage over time, he will cleanse those, that's not a problem, but there is no reverse of that. There is no anti-shock ability in this game. So what this does mean, if you have speed down on you, or if you have offense down, tenacity down, he'll go ahead cleanse that, but guess what? He'll go ahead and grant you speed up, tenacity up, and offense up, and likewise with those other things like critical chance down and so forth. And then if you don't have anything, he's going to grant retribution to everyone. So something that was really unique to Kylo Ren, now General Kenobi can just give it like it's nothing special, and in all regards, it is a very special ability right there. Now, here comes another cool attack that he has, and that is Lead the Charge. And what this does is that he goes ahead, does a really cool animation to attack. Right after he attacks, he grants offense up to a random ally for 2 turns, guaranteed offense up, and then he calls all other buffed allies afterwards to assist, and each of those allies does 30% less damage. But again, if you have 4 rays behind you, that's a lot of damage even with the 30% being knocked off there. So it's a very powerful move, much like that of Commander Cody, but it applies to all allies and is not specific to one faction. And now this is his highest dealing attack before considering that one ability where he can do double damage. And this does 4,304 to 4,756. Now, we're not done yet. We still have 2 more things to go over. He has a lot here. The next is his leader ability, which is the 212th Attack Battalion Commander. And here's a really big paragraph. So Jedis and clones, they're going to gain 30% max health and 70% defense. Anytime a Jedi ally heals, allies that already had full health, they're called to assist, and they deal 50% less damage. So we'll explain that in a second. And then when a clone ally uses a special ability, they gain a buff of some sort. So if you're an attacker, you'll gain advantage. If you're a support character, you'll gain stealth. And if you're a tank clone, and we all know of one that we love or hate, they can taunt for 1 turn. So what this means is that you can turn someone like Fives into a tank, which is something that people were scared of. It's going to become a reality soon. Fives uses his assist attack that he has, gains a taunt, could possibly get foresight from Kenobi through some means, and and then the other thing is when a Jedi ally heals. So let's say Kenobi, Fives, and Rex, they're at 100% health. If Luminara heals or Jedi Councilor, if they heal and they already have full health, they're going to go ahead and call Rex, Fives, and Kenobi to attack the person that they're looking at while healing. So this makes healers great again, and it gives them a purpose to heal and bring attacks, because that's one thing that we didn't see. Healers, they kind of disappeared after a while due to protection and health being around, but this could ultimately change that, and you might see a comeback for characters like Luminara. Now lastly, to finally top off the cake here, we have his last ability known as Sorasu. And what this does is that General Kenobi has a 65% chance to gain foresight for 2 turns. And then whenever another ally is critically hit, General Kenobi grants them critical hit immunity for 1 turn. And then, we're not done here. He also taunts if someone gets critically hit here. So we know he's a tank in the game, and this is where the tank ability finally comes in. All those previous abilities really had nothing to do with the tank, and then this final thing just wraps up the whole present for you. So if someone gets critically hit due to a Lando, IG-88, Wiggs, Wedge, he's going to taunt, and then he's going to grant that person who got hurt, or all the people who got hurt with a critical attack, they're going to gain critical hit immunity. So what happens is that this is a very shore trooper and Royal Guard element, but I honestly think this is much better because it can happen very frequently. You don't have to wait till someone gets below 50% health, and then he grants critical hit immunity. Just the possibilities of this taunt constantly happening. If you have a Qui-Gon Jinn who stripped the taunt, there's a chance that General Kenobi might taunt again in 2 seconds. So a character like Sun Fac, which I mentioned before, he's a very great cross meta character. He's probably going to be very handy to constantly try to rip those taunts off of Kenobi, because he will be taunting frequently. And honestly, this has a very strong potential to end the AoE meta that we have. So if he becomes widely adopted, he's an excellent counter to characters like Lando, Wedge, Biggs, and Droids, because mainly the meta is right now is whoever's Landos goes second, they're going to win most likely. And when we see this, Lando's going to go ahead and do his AoE attack, pretty much critically hits everyone. Everyone gains critical hit immunity. That second attack Lando's going to get off is not going to critically hit, and it slows down the battle for the enemy. So we might see the end of this when General Kenobi starts rolling around. So now we know the numbers, we know his abilities. Let's go ahead and talk about the gear requirements. Is it going to take you forever to gear this character after it took forever to get the character in the first place? So all the maximum gear levels now after getting to 85 is gear 11. Now when it looks at raid gear, he's actually really easy to gear up here. He only needs 2 pieces of raid gear, and that's the Mark V droid collar, as well as the Mark VI Nubian design tech, which is below the average. Now that the level cap went to 85, we see the average go from 2 to 3, and that puts him right below the average of 3. Now, what about the gold gear? It's a new gear that just got implemented. We don't really have our hands on it too much. The average gold gear needed in this game is 198. Well, guess what? General Kenobi needs a whopping 0 pieces of gold gear, and that's right, as of now, he does not need any gold gear to get up to gear 11, to his very maximum gear. So he's one of 15 that actually do not need gold gear in general, which is a very small group, and he's probably the best character out of that group that does not need gold gear. Now, purple gear, it's definitely he needs a lot more out of purple gear at least. So the average amount of purple gear needed in this game is 1,347, with General Kenobi needing 1,660. Now, the most popular pieces are pretty much the Mark III Carbonti sensor arrays, which he needs 450 of them, and then he also needs about 200 of the Mark III stun cuffs. And then the rest of the purple gear is mostly miscellaneous and nothing as big as those numbers there. And when it comes to blue, green, and white gear, we actually find he's way below the average for them, so getting him to those first initial gear levels will not be too much of a trouble for you. Now let's go to the more subjective parts of my review where we talk about the random tips I have and my setup recommendations. And pretty much the first thing I want to say, and I've already mentioned this before, but this guy actually might be your replacement for Royal Guard, and General Kenobi has a lot more utility. Pretty much because of the fact that General Kenobi is going to constantly instant taunt no matter how many critical hits come, and you don't have to wait till someone is below 50% health. And beyond that, pretty much Royal Guard's only purpose is to stand still and take punches to the face, where General Kenobi will call assist. He will go ahead, grant foresight. He'll go ahead and cleanse your debuffs, so a lot more utility, and he's going to be a very short trooper-like character, and also a much like a Royal Guard character. So we might see Royal Guard slowly get phased out with General Kenobi becoming more popular. And I've also mentioned this before, but he has a very high probability to just shut down the AoE and crit based teams. So get ready for this. If General Kenobi starts becoming a very popular character, you might want to think ahead and predict where the meta might be heading afterwards, because your Landos, Wedge, and Biggs, they might not be as useful at that point with General Kenobi lurking in the shadows there. Moving on to this next point, will he be the next best leader to have? That is something I'm unsure of, because we need to see him finally in action in Arena. However, I will say he's probably going to be one of the best leaders for Galactic War, your light side battles, your Cantina battles, because he's going to grant a lot of health bonuses to your fellow Jedis, and it's going to promote you to add some Jedis to your Galactic War so you can constantly spam heals, which we know Galactic War, for a lot of people, you need a lot of healers sometimes, so you actually might go through a whole Galactic War without losing any health, and plus you're getting a lot of assist attacks. Whether or not this is going to be useful in Arena, it could actually be very useful when you have characters like Fives, Rex, and Anakin behind you, but that we might need to see more. And I got a couple other considerations you might want to think about. If you don't have a good Dispeller like Rex, General Kenobi actually might be a pretty good character to have. He'll go ahead and get a lot of assists in, which could get characters like Tebow to assist, Qui-Gon Jinn to assist, Five to assist, so he actually might be a great alternative, and he'll be able to grant retribution at the same time, so this is a very good combination to have for the raid. And wrapping up our random tips, random info, and recommendation section, I want to go ahead and talk about mods, and by far the most recommended mod that I would talk about are mods that are the health sets, because this will multiply his amazingly good health pool, getting that number even higher in concurrence with the big health pool that he has, and the possibility of the 30% health bonus from his leader ability. And also with that, when you're applying health mods onto him, you also want to get mods that grant protection, because this will multiply his huge pool for protection, getting it even higher and satisfying the role of the tank even better. And lastly, I noticed that with a lack of speed, he doesn't seem as active in the game. He seems very slow, he doesn't help out as much, so I definitely recommend going ahead and tossing in mods that grant like the plus 30 speed, plus 26 speed, plus 14 speed, whatever you got there, to make sure he's helping as much as possible, because unlike Royal Guard or a Short Trooper, they don't need to be as active in the game, they just gotta stand there and take damage. Kenobi also has very important abilities outside of his taunt, where you want him to go ahead and use his dispelling abilities as much as possible, using his assist ability as much as possible, and his basic attack could deal good damage and grant foresight, so you want to make sure he's a very fast and strong tank, and that's pretty much my main recommendation there. So let's go ahead and summarize all this. And by far, he is one of the most well-developed characters in the game, from his animation to his abilities, where his usefulness is pretty much second to none. However, he's a very difficult character to acquire at this point in time, because he is behind the AAT raid rewards, which many of us are having a hard time accessing at this point. However, he has a few drawbacks that are very easily addressed through mods and just through the definitions of his abilities, which kind of compensate for the lack of maximum damage which he has. Also, very easy to gear up, only 2 pieces of raid gear needed, 0 pieces of gold gear, very low on the blue, green, and white spectrum, but of course he does need some kind of a lot of purple gear. But pretty much the biggest highlight here is that he is going to make Jedi great again, and I'm certain he will put an end to this AoE crit damage meta that we have, and once people start to adopt him. And in case you're wondering, how are we going to stop this beast? Because he is, I'm honestly tempted to say he is the best character in the game. However, I will hold that reservation for a little longer. But if you want to know how to possibly counter this, if you have a lot of money, Sun Fac is going to help you out. If not, Emperor Palpatine will also be a great alternative to ensure he's stunning, he's applying shock to everyone so they don't get any sort of buffs from Kenobi. So those will probably be your two main counters to General Kenobi as of this time. So I've already slightly hinted at where I'm going to place General Kenobi, but let's go ahead and make this official. Let's pull up the Hall of Fame and see where he is going to land, from the Grandmaster to the Youngling status. And with everything in mind and the amazing kit that he has, by far without a question, he is going to be in your Grandmaster category. And I'm going to hold back my reservation on the whole, probably the best character in the game. We're going to wait and see. However, I think Emperor Palpatine is going to be a great counter to him. But overall, without a single doubt in my mind, General Kenobi is going to be an absolutely amazing character in this game, and I'm super anxious to get him in my inventory, and I'm just hoping we can finally get some good heroic raid rewards. But right now it's very difficult, and it might be a long time before I actually see him in my personal inventory. So let me know what you guys think. Do you believe, like I do, that he is going to end the current AoE meta? Do you think he's just a great character in general, or do you think that he's a bad character? Let me know down in the comments. Also, let me know what you want to see in our next episode. Currently, I am planning in our next in-depth review to be Darth Vader, so look forward to that. He is a very, very highly requested character. It's at least had 100 requests to showcase him, so we will do that soon. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. I created a Twitter account. Just look up ArnoldT101. That's where you can find me to stay up to date with the latest Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes news, as well as follow my Discord chat, which you'll find in the comments below. Click on that. You'll get to my main Discord room if you want to hang out, chat with me, my guild, as well as all of you other guys who are already in there. But thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please leave a like, comment down below, subscribe, and we'll talk again later. Peace out.